Okay. If you don't see the signs that what you should be doing, how can you go about initiating something that she wants to do? For instance, like I don't have the same sort of wants, I guess.
Sure.
And so yeah, how do you go about? Is there an easy way to go about, or is there?
I think there's an easy way to go about it. Shut your mic off. But feel free to turn it back on here in a minute. You can't be expected to read her mind or her feelings. And I get really irritated at the NT wives that think that that's supposed to happen. They can do it. They're intuitive like that. They can read somebody's facial expression and they kind of already know what that person might be thinking. They can hear the voice inflection in somebody, especially one of their children. They almost instantly know what that child is feeling. You ain't got that skill. And until she gets that piece, she can just continue to beat her head against a brick wall. So that's the first point. Janet, turn your mic back on if your phone's not ringing. So, Mr. Anderson, what's your first name?
Dave.
Dave. So that's the first point. You can't be expected to know what she wants. Okay. That's fair enough. So, but it wouldn't take much effort or time for you to, and I know this, I'm getting ready to ask you to do a written list, and I'm sure Janet will have no problem with this. But before I even mention that, this written list will always be in some form of revision. So there's nothing wrong with her coming up. Okay, you want to know, Dave? It was Dave, right?
Yes.
You want to know what I would like to do in the way, there's really could be two categories. We've kind of already mentioned it. There's conversation, and then there's activities. The conversation, the activity may or may not include conversation necessarily, but you're still doing something together. So I'm sure there are other categories. Those would be the two biggies. Topics of conversation. Janet says these are topics of conversation that I would enjoy for you to initiate from time to time. She writes them down. And Dave, here's a small list of activities that I would enjoy you initiate and say, hey, can we go do this? Or what do you think about doing that? Or and the more spontaneity, the better, really. So, just so it doesn't sound terribly scripted, like, okay, on Wednesday night, I'm supposed to ask her this question here. So, I mean, some of it needs to be a little mechanical up front, Dave, and there's no shame in that until you practice doing this. And then now it's become kind of a habit and you're not really so deliberate and businesslike about it. So, Dave, you're asking, I don't really know what she wants in the way of me to initiating stuff. Would there be any harm in her writing a few things down to give you a few ideas?
Yeah. No.
What's one example, Janet, that can go on the list that you'll write down later? Let's come up with two. I would like for you to give Dave a suggestion with respect to conversation, topics. What's one thing that would be nice if Dave just maybe out of the clear blue brought up this topic purely for the sake of idle, boring chit-chat, which is how he's probably going to download it. Your mic's off.
Hi, Mark. Yeah, Dave will close off at most anything. Now, I must say, right from the get-go, after we have started these sessions, and it was only recently we heard about Asperger's, that it all started to make sense to us. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't tell you how much an improvement I have seen in the last little while. As Dave's asking these questions, up to this point, he wouldn't even have asked a question like that.
Okay, well, let me stop you right there, but try to remember where you left off. First of all, I asked the guys if they wanted to practice this beginning business of initiating. He chimed right in there. Mm-hmm. First one with hands up. The other thing I want to say to what you just said before you launch is, did you tell him that you appreciate these new changes or whatever?
Oh my goodness, yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. Because that'll be very reinforcing for Dave, because if he's like most of the other guys I work with, he's been in the doghouse so long, he's starting to bark. And so to actually get some encouragement is gold. Gold. Gold, capital letters, bold, italicized, underlined, red, font of 72. So thank you, Janet, so what were you going to continue to say now that I interrupted you?
No, I'm sorry. I probably interrupted you, Mark. I would say that I have always shown the appreciation when it's come. I think what this has happened with this is the acknowledgement that there were things that needed to be worked on. And, I think that's why for 45 years we've really been able to deal with all of this, is because I would always point out the good.
Mm-hmm.
And but this has really made a difference. Dave is initiating things. Dave is coming, his special interests aren't taking over his day at this point. I can ask something very simple and it's done immediately when it wasn't even needed to be done immediately. It's almost like there's been an acknowledgement on his side that, oh my goodness, there is a better way of doing all of this.
Well, by the way, Dave, thank you. God bless you. But most guys, not all of them, I don't want to make them sound like they're saints. Some of them, the vast minority of them, honestly just don't give a shit. She's a pain in the ass, and I'm going to spend most of my time trying to figure out how to stay away from her. That sounds very exaggeratory, but unfortunately it's not. But the other 95% of men on the autism spectrum, they would say, I would love to make her happy. There's not going to be one guy in here that's going to disagree with. I would love to make her happy. I just haven't quite figured out how to do it yet. So it's not that Dave has been holding back. He just wasn't sure what to do or where to go, type thing. So, did I answer your question sufficiently, Dave? And this is something you guys can do?
Most definitely, yes. I've just got to be a little more understanding, a little more flexible in my thinking. And up to this point, I knew something was wrong. I didn't know what it was that was wrong until maybe a month and a half ago. And then I started to understand it a little better. And I think Jan understands it better too.
Okay. Well, go ahead.
Oh, Mark, I was just going to say, I think the greatest gift you've given us is not to take it so personally.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge gift.
I'm glad that works for you. Unfortunately, with I would say the majority of NTs, that's not enough. It's a help, but they don't chalk it up as to being like a real big deal, because they're still focused on all that went wrong and they haven't quite made the paradigm shift. But what I want to say to Dave and the other guys in here is, with emotions blindness, sometimes it's hard for these guys to empathize. It's not that they don't want to empathize, and it's not that they don't have empathy. They rarely have displayed empathy, but so let's make that distinction. So with emotions blindness, it's really hard to empathize. You get a pass on that to a degree from me, maybe not from her, but let's make the distinction between, at least in my opinion, between empathy and compassion. Empathy is, I understand exactly how you're feeling. That's going to be a hard one for you, Dave and others. Compassion is, I may not know necessarily how you are feeling or why you are feeling that way, but you're important to me and I want to do whatever I can do to reduce your suffering. That's the difference between empathy and compassion. You may have a hard time empathizing, but you will not have a hard time unless you just choose not to really care. You won't have a hard time with compassion, which again is, I'm not sure why you're distraught. And even when you tell me why you're distraught, it doesn't seem to quite make logical sense to me. But if you say you're distraught, and I care about this marriage, and I'm going to employ compassion, which is, what can I do to reduce your suffering? So you don't get a pass on that one at all. You can be in the business of being compassionate without necessarily being full tilt, pedal to the metal in the business of empathy. That's kind of a tangent, but I think it's an important one. Anybody have a question on what we've talked about so far? Brad.
Hi, Mark.
Hi.
We kind of hit rock bottom this week, I think.
Okay.
I really haven't done
Now,
much.
before you move on,
I've been sitting listening for the last.
before you move on, Brad.
Yeah.
It's not uncommon. In fact, I would say it actually is probably common for when people start therapy. Doesn't have to be me, anybody. They go to their person in the hometown, maybe they do a group, they come to my Skypes, whatever. It's not uncommon at all for things to kind of get worse before they get better. The reason I interrupted you is because if you've been married for, I'm going to make up a number, 25 years, it's taken 25 years for things to get to this point. And now you're going to make a radical change, and you expect that that's going to just undo 25 years, I'm using that as an example, of pain and memories and etc. And so there's two things at play. There's a huge history of pain, and if both parties are making some significant changes, that really upsets the apple cart, because the two of you got used to operating under the old system, and now you're changing the system, and it's going to take a while to get used to the new system. So I'm sorry to interrupt you, Brad, but I think that's an important point. Go ahead, please.
Like I said, I've been doing the sessions here. I haven't really raised my hand at all, but I haven't done the homework that you asked us to do. I just kind of.
Brad, you shut your mic off, buddy.
Yeah, that helps, doesn't it?
There you go.
I was just saying that for the 16 years we've been married, we've been doing these sessions here for the last a couple months, but I haven't really done the homework that you assigned to us. That was brought up to me this week. We kind of hit rock bottom. For the last 13 years, she's been complaining about the lack of empathy, the lack of compassion, the lack of understanding her. I think she's crazy, everything that I read. And then she brings up the Cassandra syndrome thing, and I watched your video on that, and I'm actually starting to understand that the parts that I have led her down, because she really, really wasn't that way in the beginning. So I must have had something to do with getting her into that Cassandra syndrome thing. And I feel pretty bad about it now, because I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought, that she didn't understand me, and I couldn't understand her, what she was trying to do. I was trying to be right. She was trying to run her business. I'm trying to run mine, and la-da-da. But I kind of understand after watching your video on the Cassandra syndrome of what she's been going through now, and how my Asperger's has affected her. And it's not me thinking she's crazy anymore. So I'm going to try and do my best to keep looking at those and keep researching it to find out how she's feeling. And I got a better job to do. I'll say that.
Well, Brad, that was a very stand-up thing that you just did. He not only spoke up, so he honored my request there, but he also basically went on record as, I haven't been doing the homework. So he took ownership of a lot of the problems that were going on. That's huge. That's huge. Just the acknowledgement right there that I've learned some things, I'm starting to understand some things, I've got some work to do. That's acknowledgement, which opens the door to change. Without that acknowledgement, the door stays closed to change, and we're screwed. So, Brad, I'm very proud of you. Very proud of you.
Do you care to talk at all about your video on the Cassandra part, as far as the NTs that are listening, if there are any, and what it has done to them as far as their end?
They can. I don't necessarily have anything to add. I will add something because you asked. I think what I would do right now, if you guys give me 10 seconds, I'm looking up the video that Brad was referring to. Actually, I'll just talk while I'm doing this at the same time, because some of the guys may not have watched that video. So what I would have to say about Cassandra syndrome is it's actually technically not a diagnosis in the DSM-5 rather. But
it really is to a T, Mark. I mean, everything that it says there is what she's been going through.
Yeah, even though it's technically not something in the DSM-4, that doesn't really change anything, because it is still a real phenomenon. I'm not going to call it a disorder, because it's technically not a disorder yet. So anyway, I put CS Cassandra, and there's the video that that Brad was referring to. In a nutshell, I'll just refer to Brad in this. He'll correct me if I'm wrong. Brad is largely task-oriented. He may have felt that emotions were confusing and kind of getting in the way of completing tasks. And he's very independent, very autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
She, which is Kathy, is that right?
Correct.
Is in many regards the opposite. She is very much a team player rather than an independent player. She is very much people, not that she can't do tasks. She's very people-oriented as opposed to task-oriented. And she's fully aware of all the intricate nuances of emotions inside and out. And so she turns to her life mate, soulmate, team player, whatever you want to call yourself, guys, for the reason that she married you is because she wanted that deep soul connection. And when he is off over there doing his own thing, almost too much, which is his way of dealing with his anxiety, she loses a piece of herself. She literally loses a piece of herself. And when you lose a piece of yourself, your identity changes, your personality changes, your DNA changes, the plasticity, the neuroplasticity in your brain changes. And it manifests in not only a lot of psychological damage, but physiological damage. So anyway, that's the nutshell on that. I think another important point at this point, Brad and others, is if you get to acknowledgement, as Brad has, that's not an opportunity you shouldn't take that as an opportunity to beat up on yourself. Oh, I was such an idiot. Oh, I should have known this all along. You know, I can't believe that I'm such an ass. You don't want to go down that road, because if you do, you're going to be, this business of beating up on yourself is going to make it a little more palatable for you to beat up on her. If you have a lot of self-love, you're going to have a lot of other love to give. If you have a lot of self-beating up, you're going to have a lot of other beating up to give. Does that make sense? So you don't want to do to yourself what you don't want to do to other people, because if you beat up on yourself, call yourself a failure, this and this and that, you will be inclined to do that to other people too, especially her.